Today, I want to tell you a story that changed my life, and doing so fills me with emotion. My name is Omar Hassan. I'm 23 years old, and I live in Toronto, Canada. But to truly understand who I am, I need to take you back in time, to where it all began. Amman, the capital of Jordan, my hometown. Amman is a vibrant, pulsating city. Its narrow streets are always full of people. The markets overflow with the smell of freshly baked bread, grilled meat, and spices that seem to dance. And 5 times a day, the sound of the call to prayer echoes from the mosque and mixes with the daily noise of the city. I grew up there, in a small apartment, in a simple neighborhood, where the walls were so thin that you could hear your neighbors coughing or laughing late at night. The constant smell of coffee and dust was part of the air we breathed. In the morning, my mother would already be in the kitchen, and the sound of pots and pans would wake me up. Always the same breakfast: bread, cheese, olives, and strong tea. A simple routine, but full of love. I am an only child, which in practice meant carrying my parents' entire dreams and expectations on my shoulders. My father, Hassan, is a taxi driver, a tough man with a strong voice and eyes that sometimes seem to weigh on. He would drive around in the sun all day, come home exhausted, his shirt stained with sweat, and always say the same thing: "Omar, you need to be a better Muslim, study, make us proud." He wanted me to be an engineer, have a good job, and show the neighborhood that our family deserved respect. But every word he said was like a stone in my chest. I was terrified. My mother, Illa, was the opposite. Calm and dedicated, she spent her days praying, cooking, and doing household chores. She would gently wake me up at dawn to pray, always with that sweet voice: "Omar, get up, let's pray together." Sometimes, while she was kneading bread with her hands, she would look at me with concern and ask, "Are you okay, my son?" I would say, "Yes," but it was a lie. Inside, I felt lost. I was afraid to admit that something inside me was breaking. I didn't know if Allah was listening, he still cared about, or if I believed in him the same way I had before. At the time, I was studying engineering, trying to be the perfect son, the perfect student, but it was all too much. Anxiety consumed me. I would spend nights awake, my heart racing, staring at the cracked ceiling of my room and praying silently. "Allah, what more do you want from me? I'm trying." But all I got was silence, a silence that made me feel even more alone. At university, I felt out of place. There were classmates who didn't care about faith. They skipped prayers, hung out in cafes, smoked hookah, and made fun of girls. And there were those who were extremely religious, who would judge me even if I missed the prayer time. One day, I completely forgot it was Ramadan because of a tasting and ate something in the courtyard. Khaled, a classmate, looked at me with contempt and said, "You're going to have to explain yourself to Allah." That hurt me. I was mortified. From that moment on, I started to distance myself from people. I hid. I was even afraid of being seen. My only respite was my best friend, Yusuf. He was 24, a business student, and a typical guy who took everything in stride. We used to sit on the steps of the engineering building, sharing a bottle of soda. He would try to distract me with jokes and say, "Relax, Omar. Allah won't send you to hell just because you missed a prayer." I would smile, but deep down, it didn't help. Because I didn't just want to avoid hell, I wanted to feel peace. I wanted to truly believe. I wanted to feel close to God. But I didn't know how to do that anymore. Sometimes Yusuf would insist that we sneak out to the market. We would buy some cheap falafel sandwiches and sit in a corner, watching the street vendors haggling with customers as if they were in a theater, shouting, laughing, and making exaggerated gestures. In those moments, it was as if I could breathe a little easier, as if the world felt lighter, if only for a moment. But the relief never lasted. Soon the weight would return, settle on my shoulders, on my chest, and I would feel it all over again. I remember one day in particular. I was in a structural design class, trying to concentrate, but my mind was elsewhere. The teacher was talking and writing on the board, but I couldn't see it. All I could think about was my father's tired face, my mother's worried gaze, my grades, my prayers, the doubt that was eating away at me inside. That's Mayam was in my class. She was 21 years old, quiet, always walked alone, and wore a discreet necklace with a cross. She was Christian, something unusual in Jordan, and because of that, many students whispered behind her back. I never heard her raise her voice. But that day, after class, she came up to me with a slight smile and said softly, "Omar, you look burdened. God sees your heart." This took me by surprise. In my faith, everything had always been about doing the right thing, praying at the right times, fasting, following the rule. No one talked much about the heart. I quickly thanked her, somewhat at a loss for words, and left. But her words stayed with me, like a seed planted in soil I didn't even know existed within me. That night, as I lay in my bed, the cracked ceiling above me seemed quieter than usual. I grabbed my phone, opened the browser, and typed in, "God looks at the heart." The first result wasn't from the Quran, it was from the Bible. Something about the Lord looking at the heart, from a book called 1 Samuel. I didn't even know what 1 Samuel was, but it intrigued me. I'd never read the Bible. I'd never been allowed to, in fact. My dad would freak out if he knew. But I couldn't stop thinking, what if God actually looked at what was inside of me, at what I felt, and not just what I did? I tried to push the thought away, telling myself I was being silly. I was Muslim. I knew what to do. Pray, study, obey, keep going. But even as I said that, something inside me felt broken, like I was trying to hold up a wall that had already cracked. I didn't know it, but I was about to face the moment that would change everything. It was a sweltering afternoon in 2023. It had been weeks since that conversation with Mayam. I was walking home from college, exhausted, with my backpack full of books, and my head full of worries. The streets were crowded, people shouted, cars honked, the rhythmic sound of a ball being kicked by children on the hot asphalt. The smell of fruit, smoke, and sweat clung to my skin. And me. I hadn't eaten all day. I was doing one of the voluntary fasts my father always encouraged me to do. Allah is pleased with those who go above and beyond. I even forgot to drink water that I had spent hours studying for a test that could decide my semester. My eyes were burning. My mind was a mess. And above all, my father's voice wouldn't. Omar, you need to make us proud. I felt like I was failing Allah, failing. I tried to convince I just need to get home, rest. It will pass. But as I turned the corner of a narrow street near the market, everything began to spin. My vision became blurry, as if I were looking at the world through wet glass. My legs began to give way. I tried to hold onto a wall, but missed. And then, everything collapsed. I hit the ground hard. I felt my head hit the asphalt. The sound was dull, loud. A sharp pain shot through my skull, and for a second, everything went silent, an eerie, heavy silence. I heard distant, "Call for help! He's passed out! Quick, someone call an ambulance!" A woman in hijab knelt beside me, her voice shaking. "He's not moving!" A man with a cart dropped everything and ran to. A boy appeared with a small bottle of voices to come felt heavy, the lights fading. Before I could understand what was happening, everything went dark. I thought, is this how you die? The fear I felt at that moment, I can't explain it. It was more than fear of death. It was fear of what came after. I wasn't ready to meet Allah. I knew that. I knew I hadn't been good enough. I had missed prayers, let doubts grow inside me, even eaten during Ramadan by mistake. I felt dirty, inadequate, and the only thing that echoed in my head was, that's it, I'm going to hell. When my eyes opened, I was no longer on the streets of Amman. I no longer saw the vendors, the cars, or the children. I was somewhere else, a dark, suffocating, terrifying. I had never seen anything like it, but as soon as I smelled the smoke and felt the creepings in hell, the smoke was so thick, I could barely, each breath burned like liquid. The ground beneath me felt like on fire, and even with, I could feel the heat rising in my legs. I was shaking, not from the cold, but from terror. All around me, voices were screaming, screams of despair, of pain, of endless suffering. The sound cut through the air like night. I saw the flames dancing in the distance, devouring the darkness with a living fury, and the smell of burning flesh made me sick. And then, in the midst of it all, I began to see faces, familiar faces, people from my life, people I respected. Among them, one face made me freeze. It was Sheikh Ahmed, the Imam of a serious, firm man who always preached about discipline and obedience. There he was, engulfed in flames, his face contorted in pain, his robe on fire. When he saw me, he shouted in a voice that no longer sounded, "I was wrong, Omar. The rules didn't save me. I thought it was enough." But it wasn't. Those words hit me like a blow. I saw his hands stretched out to me, burn, black. "If you don't find out the truth, you'll end up here too." I took a step back, stunned, my heart racing, my whole body shaking. How could he be there? He was the example of devotion, of obedience, if not even escape. What could he say about me? And then what I saw completely shattered myself in the middle of my face. I screamed, desperate. I never found peace. I never found peace. It was like watching a future version of myself, a me who followed all the rules, who tried so hard, but who never understood what it meant to truly live, what it meant to truly believe. And there I was, burning, consumed by my own doubts, by the anxiety that paralyzed, by the fears I never dared to confess. I saw my parents at my funeral, my father, serious, standing beside the grave, cold, hard. He failed us. And my mother, crying silently, her face covered by her hands. I should have known. I should have helped my... It destroyed me. It was like feeling everything at once. Physical pain, shame, loneliness. I fell to my knees. The tears flowed uncontrollably. The heat of the flames burned, but nothing hurt more than the knowledge that I had let everyone down, even God. "Allah, save me, please!" screamed. begging with everything, but the darkness only grew thicker. The screams grew louder. The despair grew more suffocating. I felt like I was drowning in fear. It was as if all my effort, every fast, every prayer, every attempt to be good enough had been for nothing. Why wasn't it enough? Why wasn't it enough? I saw flashes of my life. Me lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, my heart racing with anxiety. Me trying to look strong, trying to believe, but empty inside. A hole that the religion I was taught couldn't fill. This is my punishment, I thought. I'll stay here forever. But then, something unexpected happened. A light, dim and far away, like a lone star in an endless sky. But it began to grow stronger, to push back the darkness. The heat of the flames slowly faded, as if a gentle breeze were blowing through. The screams faded, turned to whispered, and the air, once suffocating, became light enough for me to breathe again. It was as if something, or someone, was coming to get me. The light grew brighter, and for an instant I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know if it was a vision, a dream, a warning, or a miracle. But I knew something was changing. Something was calling me out of that place of pain. And I wanted to follow. I needed follow. I was still surrounded by darkness, my heart racing, the memories of that place burning in my mind. But in the light, something inside me began to change. For the first time, I didn't feel completely alone. The light was getting closer, and instead of burning me, it wrapped around me like a hug. It was warm, yes, but in a calming way, as if to say, "You're safe now." For the first time since I'd fallen into that dark place, my heart began to slow down. It was like someone was there watching over me, even when I thought I was completely alone. It was then that I saw him. In the midst of that light stood a man. He shone, not like a lamp, but like the sun reflecting off water. His clothes were white as freshly fallen snow, and his face was peace, pure, complete, indescribable. I had never seen it before, but somehow I knew who it was, and my heart was in conflict at that moment. But I am Muslim. This doesn't make sense. I should see Allah, not. I felt small, confused, like I had done something wrong just by being there with him. But then he spoke. His voice was soft as a breeze, but at the same time powerful, like a storm that calms. Single word. "Omar," he said, looking straight into my eyes. "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." Those words hit me, not just in my ears, but deep inside me, in the most hidden place where I kept all my doubts, my fears, my pain. And in that moment, looking at it, I knew he saw me, truly. He saw everything I was, even the parts I hid even from myself. And still, he loved me. Jesus stepped forward, and that's when I saw his hands. There were scars on them, like old holes, marked by pain. And then he showed me the side of his body where a spear had pierced it. "I died for you, Omar, to give you peace and eternal life." I broke down. The tears came like a flood, streaming down my face, uncontrollable. It wasn't fear, it was love. A love so big, so present, so real, that it went through me completely. I had never felt anything like this. No prayer I had ever made me feel like this. No fasting, no rules, no effort. It was as if Jesus was holding me from the inside. He took my hand, and hell disappeared. Suddenly, we were in a garden. The grass was green and soft beneath my feet, as if I were walking on clouds. A clear stream ran beside it, its water sparkling in the sunlight. Colorful flowers bloomed everywhere, spreading the sweet scent of jasmine. And the birds, they sang such beautiful songs that I wanted to stay there, listening forever. The light still surrounded us, golden and soft. I felt it real, like nothing, absolutely nothing, could ever hurt me again. Jesus walked beside me, and far away I saw a city. It shone like gold, with gates that sparkled like precious stone. He pointed to it and said, "This is paradise, Omar. A place without fear, without pain, only joy." I saw people there, walking with smiles on their faces, laughing, with their eyes full of peace. And then I saw someone I recognized, my grandfather. He died when I was a child. He always told me old stories, gave me a sly, made me laugh. I always thought he was a good Muslim, but Jesus looked at me and said, "He found me before he died. He believed in secret. Now, he is with me forever." My grandfather looked at, smiling with a joy I had never seen. He waved at me, and my heart nearly burst. Part of me was so happy, but another part was confused. How could this be true? How could he, a man who had lived as a Muslim, be there with Jesus? Then Jesus showed me something that hurt deeply. He said, "Omar, look at your life." And I saw it all. Every prayer I said, kneeling on the mat, with my forehead touching the floor. Every time I fasted in Ramadan, even when I was tired, even when I was hungry, trying to show that I was devout. All of this flashed before me. "Now take a closer look," he said. I saw my own face during these prayers. It was empty, as if the words were nothing more than memorized repetition. I saw fasting as an obligation, not a moment of connection with God. I saw how much I tried, how much I struggled, how much I sacrificed, and yet, deep down, I always felt distant, anxious, lost. I remembered the nights I would lie down and, Allah, do you see me? Are you pleased with? But the answer was always silent. Then Jesus, with compassion, Omar, your works cannot save you. They will never bridge the gap between you and God. Only my grace can. I am the only way. And in that moment, I saw clearly. My old faith left me exhausted. I was trying to please a God who always seemed distant, always demanding more. The rules, the ritual, it all felt like a chain that held me back. I followed the orders, but I felt no love. No freedom, only fear. But there, in that garden, with Jesus before me, I felt the opposite of all that. Love, rest. Jesus showed me his crucifixion, not as a distant image, but as something real, close, lived. I saw the blood dripping, the pierced hands, the body hanging between heaven and earth. And I understood. This was for me. Every to pay for the time had tried to and failed, for every prayer, for every moment of doubt. Then Jesus showed me two paths. Two possible futures, and that's what turned my soul inside out. In the first, I continued as I always had, trying to follow Islam, striving to earn my place in paradise. I saw my life passing me by quickly. I was getting older, my face was getting more and more tired, my heart was getting heavier, my anxiety was growing, doubts were eating away at me from the inside, like acid corroding my faith. I saw myself falling apart again, and this time I didn't come back. I fell, straight back into that hell. The same flames, the same despair, the same cutting loneliness. I watched my funeral, my body buried in the same simple neighborhood where I grew up. My father stood over the grave, his face hard and tearless. He whispered, he wasn't good enough. He failed us. My mother, broken, sobbed with her hands covering her face. I should have seen. I should have helped him. My heart shattered. Even dead, even at the end, I was still a burden, a disappointment. I never found peace. Not here, not there. But then Jesus showed me something different. In the second future, I followed him, and everything was new. I saw my face, and it was different, without anguish, without fear, smiling. I saw myself sitting in silence, reading the Bible, not out of obligation, but because my heart wanted to. I saw myself helping my parents, with love and patience, sitting with them at our small table, talking about Jesus, and something that seemed impossible happened. My father's face changed, the hardness melted away. My mother's eyes, once lined with worry, now shone with hope. I found myself walking around the campus, talking to other students about the peace I had found. They listened, some cried, others smiled. Many prayed with tears in their eyes, not memorized words, but sincere prayers. I saw a crowd, Muslim, Christian, people of all kinds, and I was telling my story. And Jesus was transforming lives, one by one. He looked into my eyes and said with love that seemed to have no end, "This is the life I want for you, Omar. I love your family, I love your city, and I want you to come back and share my truth." I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face, choking with emotion. "But how, Jesus?" I said. "I'm a Muslim, my family, my community. They're going to hate me. They're going to call me a traitor." Jesus reached down and put his hand on my shoulder, and in that touch I felt something I had never felt before. Courage. It was like a fire in my chest, not a fire that destroys, but one that ignites, that awakens. He said, "It won't be easy, Omar. They will reject you. Some will try to hurt you, but I will be with you, always, and I will give you the peace you." And then he took forever come to all you, and I will unlocked. It was of weight been lifted, really. I looked at, I want this. The light around us grew brighter, enveloping, cradling. I saw the garden for the last time, the sparkling stream, the flowers dancing in the gentle wind, and I knew this place would live inside me forever. Jesus said, "Come back, Omar. Be my light where there is darkness." I nodded. I was ready, even if it cost me everything, because I had seen hell, I had touched heaven, and I knew, with every ounce of certainty in my being, that Jesus was the truth, and I was ready to follow him, no matter the cost. It was then that I opened my eyes. I was in a hospital room. Machines were beeping softly around me. The white light from the ceiling blinded me for a moment. My head was pounding. My body felt like it was made of lead. I felt like I had been asleep for an eternity, and there, sitting beside the bed, was my mother, Ila. Her face was pale, her eyes red and streaked with tears. She was squeezing my hand so tightly it almost hurt. When she saw me wake up, she choked on a sob. "Omar, you're awake. Thank God." She began to cry again, but it wasn't tears of fear. It was tears of relief. She leaned over and kissed my forehead. Her her hands shaking. I tried to sit up, but the world spun and I had to lie down again. What happened, Mom? I asked, still weak with a dry throat. She dried her eyes with the corner of her handkerchief and said in a choked voice, "You fell in the street. Oh, you hit your head. There was blood everywhere. A bunch of people rushed to help you. They took you to the hospital. You were unconscious for hours. The doctor said you might not wake up, but you woke up. It's a miracle. A miracle." He eased my hand again, and for the first time, even in that pain, that tired, I felt true. I looked at her, my heart racing. It was going to jump out of my chest. As saved me, she froze. She stood completely still, as if time had stopped. Her eyes were wide with shock and confusion, her hand still holding mine, squeezing so tightly that I could barely feel my fingers. "What do you mean, Omar?" she asked in a shaky voice. "You were calling out to Allah when you... I heard people say you were whispering." I took a deep breath, my throat feeling dry. Even so, I began to... everything. I told how I saw hell, how I felt anxiety devour me from within like fire. I told about Sheikh Ahmed, the imam who always preached blind obedience, shouting through the flames that the rules did not save him. I told him how Jesus came to me, how he showed me his scars, how he took me to heaven and showed me my grandfather, that gentle man from my childhood, and how he had secretly believed in Jesus. I told her how I saw two futures, one where I remained a Muslim and ended up in torment, and another where I followed Jesus and found peace. I told her, my voice shaking but with conviction. Jesus told me he is the only way. He told me to share his truth. My mother listened to me in silence. Her face was a painful mix of fear and curiosity. She glanced at the door several times, as if she was afraid someone was listening. When I finished, she whispered, "Omar, be careful. Your father won't understand this. He'll be very angry. And the people at the mosque, they'll call you an apostate. Do you know what that means here?" I nodded, my heart tightening, as if an old weight had... But even with the fear, something inside me was different. It was a deep, quiet, steady... I knew G was with me. "I know, Mom," said tenderly, "but I can't keep it to myself, the truth." It was at that moment that the door opened. My father, Hassan, came into the room. His expression was tense. He had been talking to the doctor in the hallway, but he had heard the last part of what I said. His face turned red in an instant. His eyes narrowed, dark as a storm. "What nonsense is this, Omar?" he shouted so loudly that the nurse in the hallway looked into the room in alarm. "Jesus, apostate, what are you saying?" I tried to explain. I tried to stay calm, even though my hands were shaking. "Daddy, I have seen hell. I have seen myself there. Jesus came to me. He showed me the truth. He is the only way to peace." My father exploded. He slammed his hand on the wall so hard it made me jump in fright. "You're just sick, that's all," he shouted. "You hit your head and now you're talking nonsense. You're a Muslim, Omar. We raised you to follow Islam. Stop this talk, or you'll bring shame to our family." My mother started crying, covering her face with her hands, begging us to stop. "Please, Hassan," she cried. "He just woke up. Let him rest." But my father looked at me with cold eyes, as if he no longer recognized me. He pointed his finger, his voice low but full of threat. "You better forget this nonsense, Omar. I won't let you ruin us." And then he left, furious, slamming the door behind him, leaving a painful silence. My mother stood there with me, wiping away her tears, without saying a word. But I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't expected, sadness and doubt. A few days later, I was discharged. I left the hospital with my body still weak and my head heavy, but something inside me was stronger than ever. I returned to our small apartment in Amman, but nothing was the same. The walls seemed narrower, the air denser, the silence more charged. I started reading the Bible on my cell phone in secret. At night, I would lock my bedroom door, sit on my bed, and read the Gospels quietly. Words that filled me like never before. Jesus healing the sick, forgiving sinners, touching those no one else would touch, dying for, resurrecting, promising eternal life. Each verse was like water in the desert. I whispered prayers to Jesus, asking for strength, asking for courage, and I felt him, always there. A friend, a savior, a presence that never left me. But I knew I had to be careful. My father watched me. He noticed every little gesture. I stopped going to the mosque. I said I was tired, that I needed to study, but he didn't believe me. "Omar, what's wrong with you?" he asked, his eyes. "You used to pray with us. Go to the mosque with me now. You are always in your room." I stared at the floor, my hands sweating, my heart beating like a drum. "I'm busy, Daddy." But he didn't. But my mother didn't say much. She just watched, worried eyes. I cooked, sewed, kept the house. She was scared herself, for all of us. And I prayed for her. I prayed for him. I prayed for the courage to be a light, even in the darkness of my own home. "Canada," his voice cold. "Do you want to leave now? Run away to a country of infidels? To live your lie. The hope that still vibrated in my chest wavered. For a moment, everything was silent. I could hear the sound of my mother's knife against the cutting board. My father slowly rose from. His eyes showed no surprise, only disappointment. "Of course you got a scholarship," he said bitterly. "Now you think you can get rid of everything. Our values, our faith, your responsibility." "It's not that, Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but it was shaking. "It's an opportunity. I want to study, and I want to follow Jesus freely, without hiding who I am." He took a step toward me, and for a moment I thought he was going to hit me, but he didn't. He just stood there, looking at me like I was a stranger in his house. "You are not my son anymore," he said in a low voice. "You are dead to—" My mother dropped the knife. She turned around, her eyes wide and her mouth open. "Hassan, no," she whispered. "He is our son. Our son." But he didn't answer. He simply walked out of the kitchen. He didn't scream, didn't argue. He just left. And he never spoke to me the same way again. I stood there, feeling as if the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. The pain of being rejected by one's own father burned hotter than any flames of hell I had seen in that vision. My mother hugged me. She didn't say anything. She just held me as if she was afraid I would evaporate completely. That night, I looked at the sky from my bedroom. The city of Amman was quiet. The lights of distant apartment flickered like tired stars. And I spoke to Jesus, not out loud, but with, "Lord, I have nothing else, only you. I choose you. I still choose you, even if it costs me everything." The next day, I started preparing for the move. I sold some things secretly, used old savings that my grandmother had given me, and with Miriam's help, I started to do the scholarship procedure. She was like a sister at that time. She took me secretly to a small meeting of Christians in a discreet house, where for the first time, I sang praises to Jesus freely, although in a whisper. There, a local pastor prayed for Omar. He said in a firm, gentle voice, "Your life is a testament. What you saw, what you lived, it was not in vain. Jesus called you to something greater. It is not an escape. It is a mission." That night, I decided, yes, I would go to Canada, but not to escape. I would go to grow, to learn, to stand firm in my faith, and one day return, not like the rejected son, but as the light that Jesus called me to be. When I told my parents about the scholarship to study in Canada, their reaction was immediate and intense. My father, with a stern face and a firm voice, said, "No, Omar, you're not going. You'll lose your faith there. You'll turn away from us, from our religion." His voice shook with anger, and my mother, her hands shaking, held the knife she used to cut vegetables, her eyes brimming with tears. "Please don't go," she begged. "You're already changing so much. We can't lose you." I tried to explain, my voice breaking. "Daddy, Mommy, I just want to go to school, follow my faith, be who I am. Jesus is with me. I know I'll be okay." But my father stood up, his chair scraping against the floor, and said, "If you go, you're not my son anymore. You're dead to him." His words cut me like a knife, and I felt tears sting my... Things got even worse. My father went to the mosque that night, and when he came back, he was even angrier. "People are talking, Omar. They say you are turning away from Islam, that you are an apostate. The leaders of the mosque have heard about it. They are watching you. They say you are a disgrace, that we have failed as parents." A shiver ran down my spine. In Jordan, being called an apostate was dangerous. People could hurt you. The authorities could get involved, and your family could be shamed. I saw the leaders of the mosque the next day when I passed by. They were standing outside, staring at me, whispering to me. One of them, an older man with a long beard, pointed at me and said something to the others, his face serious. I kept my head down, my heart racing, and ran. But I knew I wasn't safe. I went back to my room, my hands shaking, and prayed to Jesus. "Please, Jesus, help me," I whispered. "I want to go to Canada. I want to follow you. Give me the strength to do this." I felt his peace like a warm hand on my shoulder, and I knew I had to fight for this chance, no matter what the cost. I couldn't stay in Amman, not with the mosque leaders watching, not with my father's anger growing. I had to go to Canada, even if it meant losing my family. I had to trust Jesus, just as he asked me. After I got the scholarship to study in Canada, my parents were completely against it. My father, Hassan, gave me an ultimatum: stay in Amman and stop this Christian nonsense, or leave and be cut off from the family. He said, "If you go, you will no longer be my son. You will be dead to it." His words felt like a knife to my heart, cutting deeper every time I thought about it. My mother, Illa, cried, begging me to stay. "Omar, please don't go," her voice breaking. "We're going to lose you. You're all we have. I can't bear to lose you." I wanted to make them happy, to take away their pain, but I knew I couldn't stay. Jesus was calling me, and I had to follow him. I had to go to Canada, where I could be free to grow in my faith, to share his love without fear. I tried to talk to my dad one more time, hoping to change his mind. I found him in the living room, sitting on our old couch, staring at the TV, but not really watching. I sat down across from him, my hands sweaty, and said, "Daddy, please, I need this chance. I'm going to be okay. I promise. I'm not going to Canada to party or forget who I am. I'm going to get an education, follow my faith, be who I'm meant to be." He looked at me, his eyes hard, and said, "Your faith? Are you serious about this Christian nonsense? You're throwing away everything we taught you, everything we believe in, for a lie. You're going to shame us, Omar. The leaders of the mosque are already talking. They're saying we raised a traitor. If you go, you're choosing this over us." I felt tears in my eyes, but I said, "Daddy, I love you. I love Mommy, but I have to do this. Jesus is the truth. I have seen him. I can't walk away from him." My father stood up, his face red, and shouted, "Then go, but don't come back. You are no longer my son." He left, slamming the door so hard that I heard the crash echo through the house. In the kitchen, I heard my mother sobbing softly, a sound that broke my heart. I went straight to my room, my chest tight, and began packing a small backpack. It didn't have much: a few clothes, my cell phone with the cracked screen, a few books, and the small Bible that Miriam had given me. I hid the Bible inside a pair of socks, in case anyone saw it. Still, I waited. I waited for my father to change his mind, for him to come into my room and say, "Omar, I'm sorry, I love you, go to Canada, you're still my son." But he didn't. My mother appeared in the doorway, her eyes red, and helped me pack. She folded my shirts with shaking hands, trying to control her tears. "Omar, I don't understand this Jesus you speak of, but I see something different about you. You seem lighter, like you're not afraid anymore. I just want you to be safe." I hugged her tightly, tears streaming down my face. "I'll be safe. Jesus is with me. I love you." She tightened her hold on, whispered, "I love you." The day I left for the airport, I stood outside our apartment, backpack over my shoulder, waiting for them to come and say goodbye. I stared at the door, expecting them to appear at any moment, but they didn't. I walked to the bus stop alone, my heart heavy, and boarded the bus to the airport. Inside, the chaos was almost palpable. Families hugging, children crying, people running with suitcases in their hands. I checked in with shaking hands, looking around, hoping to see their faces in the crowd. I wanted to see my father stiffen and my mother whisper, "We're proud of you," but they didn't come. I felt so alone, standing there in that crowded airport, watching other families say goodbye. I whispered a prayer to, "Please help me, give me strength." I felt his peace like a warm hand resting my heart, and I knew I had to go. I got on the plane, my eyes wet with tears, leaving everything behind. When I arrived in Toronto, everything seemed like a new world. Different, strange. The cold air bit my skin, and the wide streets lined with tall buildings glistened. The English was spoken so quickly that I could barely understand it. I was a stranger in a strange place. I took a taxi to the university campus, a huge place with green lawns, red brick buildings, and students everywhere. Some were rushing to classes, others were laughing with their friends. I found my dorm room, a small space with a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out onto campus. I sat on the bed, my backpack on the floor, feeling a mix of fear and for the first time, I no longer had to hide. I could follow Jesus without fear of my father's anger or threats from the mosque leaders. I started reading the Bible every day, sitting at my desk with the door locked, just in case. I read about Jesus' love, his promises, his teaching, and I felt such a strong connection. I discovered Christian channels on YouTube, sermons from pastors, testimonies from people who had similar stories to mine, and worship songs that made me cry with gratitude. I would watch them late at night, with headphones on, with tears in my eyes, feeling a deep peace that only Jesus can give. One night, I saw a video of a man who had also been Muslim. He talked about how Jesus appeared to him in a dream, how he left Islam and found peace. It felt like he was telling my story, and that filled me with hope. I began to pray more, asking Jesus to show me how to share his love, how to do his will. That's how I found a group of Christian students at the university, something I never imagined I would do when I was in Jordan. I found a flyer on a bulletin board and went to their meeting my heart racing. They were in a small room, chairs in a circle, a table with coffee and cookies, and a human warmth that made me feel for the first time that I was not alone. When I walked into the room, a girl with a bright smile came up to me and said, "Hi, welcome, I'm Sarah." I sat down, my heart pounding with nerves. When it was my turn to introduce myself, I took a deep breath and said, "I'm Omar, I'm from Jordan. I used to be a Muslim, but Jesus called me." I began to tell my story, the breakdown, the vision of hell, how Jesus showed me heaven and called me to share his truth. As I spoke, some of the people began to cry, and others nodded, touched by my story. Sarah looked at me fondly and said, "Omar, that's amazing. You're our brother now." "Michael, The guy who led the group put his hand on my shoulder and prayed for me. In that moment, I felt loved and accepted in a way I had never felt before. They became my new family, people who understood my faith, who prayed with me, who helped me grow. We met every week, singing, reading the Bible, sharing our stories. With each meeting, I felt stronger, as if I was finally ready to do what Jesus asked me. Jesus told me to share his truth, and I knew I needed to start there in Canada. At university, I saw many Muslim students who were just like me, trying to be good enough, but with a huge void inside. I wanted them to know the peace I had. I started talking to some of them, like Ali and Muhammad, guys I'd seen in my engineering class. I was scared at first, but I'd invite them to join me for coffee on campus, where the smell of espresso was always in the air. I would say, "Can I tell you something?" And I would start telling my story about the vision of hell, how Jesus saved me, how I found peace. They listened, eyes wide, and asked questions. But what about Islam? What about the Quran? I responded with what Jesus showed me. My prayers to Allah never brought me peace. Jesus' love did. So I started having little Bible study groups in my dorm room. Just me, Ali, Muhammad, and a few others. At first, they were scared. They said, "Omar, this is dangerous. What if someone finds out?" But I prayed with them, read the Bible, and slowly, they began to open up. Ali was the first to give his life to. One night, after reading about Jesus forgiving the woman caught in sin, Ali began to cry. He said to me, "Omar, I want this. I feel that emptiness. I want Jesus." We prayed together, and I saw peace fill her face. Some students were shocked, some looked at me suspiciously, some were angry, but I stood firm, because I knew I was on the right path. Then one day in math class, Khaled, a classmate, stopped me. He looked at me seriously and said, "You are spreading hate. Telling people to leave Islam is wrong." My voice shook as I replied, "I'm not spreading hate. I'm just sharing the truth. Jesus saved me. I want others to know him too." Khaled leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You're stirring up a dangerous fire. If you continue, you could lose your scholarship." I felt enormous fear. I had worked so hard to get there, and now I could lose everything. But I remembered the words of Jesus, "I will be with you." I prayed that night for strength and decided to continue, even at risk. A few days later, my phone rang. It was Yusuf, my cousin. His voice was heavy. "Omar, I'm in the hospital. There's something serious in my heart. The doctors say it's serious." He's asking, but he's still very angry. He keeps saying that you've brought shame to the family, and that's the cause of his illness. Yusuf paused, then added, "What about the mosque? They are spreading lies about you. They're saying you've turned your back on Islam, that you're a disgrace to your family." Yusuf's voice shook as he told me, "They're spreading it all over the neighborhood, making sure people hate you, and your parents too. It's bad, Omar." My heart sank, and even my sandwich fell to the forgotten. I wanted to turn back, to run to my father, to tell him I loved him, to beg his forgiveness. But I knew it wasn't safe, not with the mosque leaders stirring up trouble behind me. I felt torn. On one side, my new life in Canada, where I could freely follow Jesus. On the other, my old life in Jordan, where my parents suffered because of me. I whispered a prayer, so quietly that only Jesus could hear. "Jesus, please help my father. Help my parents find you. Show me the way." I needed to keep going, keep sharing the love of Jesus, trusting that he would touch my family's hearts in his own time. That night, I was in my simple dorm room in Toronto, sitting at my desk, my laptop open in front of me. The silence of the campus outside was broken only by the distant laughter of a few students. My room was modest, a bed with a blue blanket, a table full of books, empty coffee cups, and a small cross hanging on the wall, a gift from my Christian group. My Bible lay open beside me, its yellowed pages showing how much I had read. I thought a lot about my father, his illness, the leader of the mosque, and the Muslim students I was talking to. I felt an urgent need to share my story with the world, to tell people about the peace I had found in Jesus. I wanted to reach others who felt the same emptiness I had felt before. So I decided to record a video, something simple to post online, and maybe someone, somewhere, would hear it. I had never done this before, and I was nervous, but I felt Jesus telling me to go for it. I turned on the laptop's camera, adjusted the light so that my face wasn't in shadows, took a deep breath, and started speaking. My voice a little shaky. My name is Omar Hassan. I'm 23 years old, and I'm from Amman, Jordan. I used to be a Muslim, raised to pray 5 times a day, fast during Ramadan, follow all the rules of Islam. I tried so hard to be a good Muslim, to make Allah happy, to make my parents proud, but inside, I was always empty, always afraid that I wasn't good enough. I paused for a moment, swallowed hard, and continued. I had anxiety. I worried too much about my grades, about my faith, about everything. Lying in bed at night, my heart racing, I would ask Allah if he saw me, if he cared. but I never felt an answer, just silent. My throat tightened, but I forced my voice to continue. Then one day I passed out on the street. I was fasting, stressed about an exam, and the heat got to me. I hit my head and was out for a few minutes. In that moment, I saw hell. I saw myself burning, consumed by anxiety, never finding. I swallowed back, but my gaze remained. I saw an imam from my mosque, Brother Ahmed, shouting the rules. He told me that I would end up there too if I did not find the... My voice wavered, but I continued, stronger now. I was terrified. I thought I would be trapped there forever. I felt like I had failed my parents. I had failed Allah. I had failed myself. I leaned closer to the camera. My heart burst, but then Jesus appeared. A light so bright it drove out all darkness. He showed me his scarred hands, the scars from his nails, the spear at his side. And he said, "I died for you, Omar, to give you peace and eternal life." A deep emotion took hold of me as I spoke. He took me to heaven, a beautiful place with gardens, streams, a golden city. I saw my grandfather, a man I thought was a good Muslim, but who secretly believed in Jesus. My face softened, my eyes shone as I revealed what Jesus taught me. Jesus showed me that my Islamic faith could not save me, that all my prayers, fasts, rules were empty because they did not fill the void that only God can fill. My voice lowered, full of conviction. He said, "Your works cannot save. Only my grace can. I am the only way." I stood there, close to the camera, feeling my heart beat strongly, full of hope and faith. Jesus showed me two futures. In one, I continued following Islam and ended up back in hell, my soul in torment, my parents grieving at my funeral, telling me I had failed them. In the other, I followed Jesus and found peace. I saw myself smiling, free from anxiety, helping my parents, sharing the love of Jesus with others. I saw attentive faces, listening, finding the same peace that I had found. Jesus said to me, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." He called me to share this truth, to be his light in the darkness. I took a deep breath, feeling my hands steady. Now, even as I woke up in the hospital, I knew I had to follow Jesus, but it wasn't easy. My parents didn't understand. My father was so angry that he called me an apostate, saying that I would bring shame to our family. I got a scholarship to study engineering here in Canada, a chance to be free, to grow in my faith. But my father told me that if I left, I would be dead to him. I came anyway, because I knew Jesus was with me. I left my home, my parents, everything I knew, and came to Toronto. I smiled, thinking about my new life. Here I found a new family, Christians who love me, who pray with me. I joined a student group at university, and they welcomed me like a brother. I started reading the Bible, watching Christian YouTube channels, sermons, testimony, worship songs. I felt so close to Jesus, so full of peace. I started a Bible study group, sharing my story with other Muslim students. I told them how Jesus saved me, how he gave me peace, and some listened. Some even gave their lives to Jesus, like my friend Ali. He told me, "Omar, I feel at peace for the first time." I cried with him, so happy to see Jesus working through me. My voice turned serious, my eyes filling with tears. But it's not all easy. Some Muslim students found out and became angry. They reported me to the university, saying, "He is spreading hate, trying to convert people." The university called me, saying I could lose my scholarship if I continued to cause problems. I'm scared, but I can't stop. Jesus called me to share his love, and I have to continue. Back in Jordan, things are even worse. My father is sick. He is in the hospital with a heart problem. My friend Youssef told me that he is asking, but still so angry, saying that I have shamed the family, that I am the reason why he is. The mosque leaders are spreading lies about me, telling everyone that I am a disgrace, making sure that people hate us, me and my parents. I want to go back to see my father, tell him I love him, but it's not safe, not yet. I looked at the camera, my voice full of hope. I am sharing this because I want you to know Jesus. He is the only way to true peace. The Bible says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life." This is the truth that changed my life. If you are feeling empty, afraid, call on Jesus. He is waiting for you. He sees your heart, just like Miriam told me back in Jordan. He loves you, no matter what you've done, no matter where you come from. I ended with a prayer, my hands clasped. Jesus, please touch the hearts of everyone watching. Show them your love, your peace. Please heal my father, soften his heart. Help my parents find you. Give me strength to continue sharing your truth. Amen. I smiled, my heart full, and said, "Will I ever be reconciled with my father? Will my family find you?" I don't know yet, but I trust in Jesus. Share your story below. I'd love to hear it. I stopped recording, hands shaking, and posted the video online. I felt so nervous, but also so free, as if I was doing exactly what Jesus wanted. I sat back in my chair, my heart racing, and whispered, Thank you. As soon as I closed my laptop, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Miriam, my Christian friend in Jordan. I opened the message, eyes wide, and read her words. Omar, I have been sharing your story here at the university. Some students are asking about Jesus. They want to meet you when you return. They are beginning to seek the truth because of you. But be careful. The mosque leaders are still angry and watching your family. My heart raced, a mixture of joy and fear. Joy because my story was reaching people in Jordan, because those students were seeking Jesus because of me. Fear because the mosque leaders kept threatening my family and my father. Would he ever forgive me? Would he find Jesus before it was too late? These questions had no answer, but one thing I knew for sure. I had to keep going. Continue sharing the love of Jesus no matter what happened. I whispered a silent prayer once, Jesus, please protect my family. Use me to bring more people and in that moment, I felt the peace of Jesus, deep, firm, unchanging. I knew I was on the right path. Even if the path ahead was difficult, dark, and full of uncertainty, I was not alone. Jesus walked with me, and that was all I needed.